Good evening. This is Secret Sauce, episode 117. Everything you wanted to know about restaurant metrics, but were afraid to ask.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Secret Sauce. Sorry about that. I went a bit BBC or something in the introduction there just to mix it up a little bit. But it's good old me speaking at you at a great rate of knots because this is super exciting. We're going to be talking about restaurant metrics, everything that you wanted to ask but were too afraid to. We're going to cover off on them. This is part 2 of our restaurant KPI series. And we'll see how we go. Hopefully we'll knock it over in one more episode, but who knows with the amount of gibbering that I do. We're going to be looking at some cool finance metrics this time. And you know what? You've got to get across the money. Like when we talked about the restaurant myths, people say, oh, you know, the money will take care of itself. It doesn't take care of itself. And it's really important that you're on top of this. And we're just going to launch straight into it because I think it's really important. Last week, we talked about, it's last week for you, it's 5 minutes ago for me. Last week, we talked about things like revenue per day, not measuring it revenue per week or revenue per month, God forbid. But the interesting thing about this is that when you're looking at things like cash flow, when you've been running the restaurant for 1, 2, or 3 years, you're going to know what your quiet months are, and you're going to know how quiet they are. This is a fundamental thing for measuring things like cash flow. You need to know if you're going to have a month that is quieter than this month, your costs need to be lower. Fundamentally, your costs need to be lower. Otherwise, you're going to make less money, or you're going to have a loss when you made money, or, God forbid, you're going to lose more money. So this is why measuring this information and looking at it, and now it allows you to do one thing I always love doing in business is skating to where the puck is gonna be. This is what Wayne Gretzky said made him the greatest hockey player of all time. He said that most people were skating to where the puck was. He always skated to where the puck is gonna be. And it's one of my little sayings. Are we going to where the puck is or where it's gonna be? Let's move to where the puck is gonna be. If you know that on average, over the last 5 years in your restaurant, that July is 10% quieter than June, then that is information that you can use at the end of June. You think, you know what? I'm going to try and cut 10% of costs out of July because I know it's going to be a bit of a struggle month. Now, the number one metric that you probably want to be looking at is cash flow. So how much cash flow comes in as opposed to how much cash is going to be going out. And so in our business, so in Australia, you've got to do this thing called a BAS. It's your business activity statement. You've got to pay your IAS, which is your something activity statement, income activity statement. I just Googled it. It's the installment activity statement. You can see I don't do that often. In fact, I've never done it. My beautiful wife, Tina, does that for me. Hooray! Thanks, Tina. You got to remit GST. They are big payments for us. As our cash flow, they are big payments. So what we do is we project ahead as to when it's going to be, and we don't know because it's heavily dependent on turnover. But we know, we're going to be down, maybe 30,000 in that week. So 3 or 4 weeks out, 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out, that you need to be starting to squirrel away a bit of that money so that you don't get smashed by having to pay the tax department a huge amount. For most businesses, it's going to be payroll. Payroll's a big thing as well. Payroll's a massive thing for us. There's lots of hungry mouths to feed in across the group. Lots of hungry mouths to feed. So we've got significant payments going out every 2 weeks. How are you sort of tracking that? How are you planning for it? How are you managing it? And we see this happens a lot in restaurants. They'll start to slow up, and then they're not going to have enough money to make payroll, And then because they don't have money to meet payroll, one or two of the team are going to leave. And it's like, why would I need to wait for payroll? I need to be paid. I've worked. And you know what? Probably quite rightly as well. As a business owner, that's your first and foremost responsibility, I think, is to pay your team. Now, interestingly enough, I find there's often the people, when we're talking to restaurant owners and they can't meet payroll, it's usually their best waitress or their best chef who leaves because they're the ones who know that they can get a job somewhere else. So cash flow is absolutely fundamentally important to a business, and you need to be sort of mapping out what the cash flow is going to be. And there should be more cash coming in than going out. Otherwise, you're going to have to start having problems if that's happening on week after week after week after week. And we see that the only thing that plugs that gap is the owners actually putting money back into the business. So you're actually paying to come to work. That's not good. One of the great things about a restaurant is that you get paid upfront most of the time for the food and services that you provide. Most of the time you're going to get paid up front. So whether it's the person comes in, places an order and pays you before they're actually given their food, whether they sit down, have a meal and pay at the end of the meal, so what are the variations on that? So some people will use an online ordering company that will pay them a few days down the track. I know with Frollo, we don't even see the money. It goes straight through Stripe, and that's usually about 2 days. I'm not actually sure what people are doing now. I know at one point Menulog was taking over 2 weeks to remit money, which I always thought was madness because restaurants are notoriously bad for cash flow. So you shouldn't be holding on to that cash for the restaurants. You should be giving the money to the restaurants as quickly as possible. Because one of the things in your general small business, you want to make sure you're getting your invoices out as quickly as possible. Well, everyone should be getting invoiced. They're going to be getting the bill on the day and it's going to be paid on the day. So you shouldn't be owed too much money, because that's one of the big ways that you can sort of bring money in pretty quickly into a business, is ringing up the people who owe you money and saying, give me some money. For a restaurant, you don't have that opportunity. So what are the things that you can do to increase cash flow? Well, the first thing you can do is obviously get more customers. And, that's one of the core things that we do. So have a think about the marketing that you're doing. Have a think about events. Have a think about all of the stuff and if you're not too sure what to do, then listen to, the other previous 116 episodes of Secret Sauce. I'm sure you'll find something in there to get more customers. Increase prices. And this is a really important thing, because if you increase your prices by, let's just say, 5%. So you might have something, let's just say that you had a burger that cost $100 and it cost you, by the time you allocate the fixed costs and you allocate your food costs and you allocate your labor costs, you might have a profit margin of 2%. So your wages are going to be, it might be, let's just say it's $35 for food in the burger. It's probably going to be a big burger, but work with me on this. Your wages costs are probably going to be about 30%, 35%. So you're up to $70 there. Then you'll have your lease, that's probably another 10%. A few other bits and pieces, getting you up to, let's just say it's about 98%. So you're only making $2 off that $100 burger. If you increase the price of that burger to $105, so up from $100 to $105, and of course we're ignoring just noticeable differences, and you wouldn't have a $100 burger anyway to be a $99 burger, but we're ignoring that, and you're going to from $100 to $105. At the end of the day, you will have not $2 left over, but $7 left over. Now, of course, this is assuming that no one goes, $105, that's too expensive for a burger. But if they're buying $100 burgers, they're probably not going to notice the difference. And that is what happens so many times. You won't lose that many customers. The people who fear that they're going to lose customers is the business owner. But time and time and time again, you see that isn't the case. Now, fun fact, talking to a restaurant owner probably 6 to 8 weeks ago, and he was selling all sorts of stuff. He was doing online ordering, and what he did was he put his prices up across the board through their online ordering platform. Shouldn't mention any names, Uber Eats. But yeah, so they were being charged 35%, and he found it completely unsustainable. Completely unsustainable. You're not going to be making any money if you're shipping stuff and paying 35% commission on it. So he put his prices up 35%. So he completely covered almost completely covered the fees from Uber Eats. Now, fun fact, he lost customers. He lost about probably a third of his customers went elsewhere. But those other customers were ordering at the increased price, which meant that his revenue did not go down. So his revenue didn't go down, and his profit margin went up significantly because he was now selling at and covering the cost of that commission. So that's one of the things that you want to be thinking about. I think it's a really cool thing. You can expand the number of people in a business. You call it your total addressable market. If you're only open for dinner, then your addressable market is people who want dinner. You can open for lunch, you can open for breakfast, you can open for 24 hours a day. Now, fun fact, make sure you got the processes in place so that you're not there for 24 hours, because your restaurant's only going to last probably about 48 to 72 hours before you go completely insane. You got to make sure that you can build a team. Remember that, go through the process that we talked about in how to take a holiday, the P's that you need, the people, the profit, the processes. If you've got the processes and people in place, then maybe you can open for more hours and address different markets, the breakfast market, the brunch market, the lunch market. Check out your operating expenses. So how much are you spending on your accountant? Could you be doing it a different way? Possibly. I know, so we trialed a bookkeeper. Now our costs were going to go up because this was work that we were doing in-house, predominantly was being done by Tina. Tina needs to be focusing on more important work. Her skills are highly valuable to the organisation. So we thought we'll outsource some of that. I'll give you the tip, it didn't work out too well. The bookkeeper knew very little. I was expecting them to actually have some really cool skills around bookkeeping. They actually knew significantly less than Tina, which, Tina's pretty clever when it comes to running accounts. These people were not. So what we're going to do is we're going to hire a bookkeeper in the Philippines. That's going to help us to free up a bit of time, and it's going to be cheaper than having a bookkeeper in Australia. We weren't hiring them full time, but yeah, have a look at the expenses. Is this the best way of doing it? Not just from a cost point of view. Now, we're obviously talking about cash flow, so this is one of those things that, we're going to spend probably a bit more, but we're going to get a process that's right, and it's going to actually help us with time. Time is one of those important things. Ask of me anything but more time. The next thing that you can do is pay your vendors at an appropriate time. What sort of account do you have with your vendors? I know that a lot of restaurants will choose a supplier based on the number of days that they've got to pay their invoice. So you might get some meat in. That meat may sit in the fridge for, on average, 3 days. So fun fact, how often is it sitting in there? And then how long have you got to pay for it? So it might be 14 days. You don't want to have a cash account if you're trying to sort out your cash flow. This is one of those things where you need to be thinking about the metrics and what they mean for your business, because one of the things that you could do is you could negotiate cheaper prices with your suppliers if you said, and we will pay on 7 days, or we'll pay on the day. Talk to your supplier. What are the options that you've got there? Obviously, you're going to want to trade off the difference between cash flow and your cost of goods sold. And there may be no right answer there. You might just need to try and manage both of those best. You don't want to be paying significantly more for a 30-day account. You don't want to be paying an extra 10%. And I know your supplier may or may not tell you this, but if you're a poor payer, they may actually charge you more. That can be interesting. Are you paying with credit cards? So you might get 14 days from a supplier, then you pay with a credit card, which might be 30 days from end of month, just say. You might get 60 days then to pay for that meat. So ideally, you're going to sell it on day 3 or day 4. That's one of those things that's going to help you with your cash flow. Are you running the business with credit card debt? Would you be better off with an overdraft? Would you be able to cut that interest rate margin? Once again, one of these things where people just say that the money takes care of itself. It doesn't take care of itself. If you've got a $30,000 credit card and you're paying 20% on it, that's $6,000 a year. That's $500 a month in interest that you're paying. Bringing in an extra $30,000 into your business would mean that every year you're going to be $6,000 better off. Something to think about. So moving on from that, there's 2 metrics that are really important to your average business, and that is days receivable and days payable. Now, fun fact, for days receivable, you shouldn't have that because you shouldn't have any receivables unless you've got, businesses who operate on account, or if you're doing catering, or where you offer an account, but generally you're going to get paid on the day that you deliver the food, deliver the service, put the meal in front of the customer. That's when you get paid. So you shouldn't be owed too much money, but you will owe quite a bit of money. And so that is one of the ratios that you want to be looking at. How long does it take you to pay your average invoice? So the way they've generally working that out is to work out your cost of goods sold, then work out, and so that's going to be over a year. So over a year, you might purchase, let's just say it's $1 million worth of food and bev. What you're then going to do is you're going to work out how much you owe, and that's going to be easy. It should be in your accounting system. So you might owe $100,000 at any one point in time. If you owe $100,000 and your cost of goods sold is $1 million, then what you do is you divide your cost of goods sold into the amount that you owe. So that's going to give us 0.1, and then you multiply it by 365. Why 365? Because that's the number of days there are in a year. So at any point in time, you're going to owe some money. And what we're trying to do is work out how long is it going to take you on average to pay that back. So in that example, it's going to be 36.5 days to pay it back. So, and that's probably quite a lot. That's probably quite high. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that from getting an invoice from a supplier, it takes you 36.5 days to pay that off. And so obviously there'll be some people that you pay quicker, and there'll be some people who you're going to pay longer. And it's probably the people giving you more generous credit terms, or the people who aren't hounding you and harassing you for the money. What you want to do is look at that and, start charting it over time so that you can see what the trends are and how you can better manage it. And you want to manage it from two perspectives, which we've already talked about. Can you get better terms? Can you get longer to pay it off for the same price? Or can you actually get a cheaper price if you pay it off a bit quicker? That's one of those things that's quite interesting. And knowing how much it's going to cost you, and that it's going to, then, if you owed $100,000 and it takes you 36 days, over the next month and a bit, over the next 5 weeks, you're going to need to find $100,000 just to pay your supplier invoices. That's an interesting fact that makes it a lot easier to manage your cash flow. Now, the next metric is one that I think is absolutely fascinating. It's not one that's talked about a lot of the time, but I find it absolutely fascinating because it is one of these things that's going to give you a perspective on how to make your restaurant profitable. And what I am talking about is rent per hour. Now, it's generally moderately disreputable businesses that would be looking at charging for a room or for accommodation by the hour, which is certainly not your business. But what we want to do is we want to start thinking about how much does it cost you to be open for each hour? Because that's going to start feeding into the kind of thing that you need to be doing as far as profitability goes. So let's just say, round numbers, your restaurant pays about, let's just say it's $10,000 a month. Okay, so that is what your lease is. Now, we don't know anything else about the restaurant, but that's fine. We're just going to run with $10,000. So what we're going to do then is we're going to multiply that by 12 to give us your annual rent, and then we're going to divide it by 52. That's going to give us your weekly rent, yeah? So on that number, it works out to be $2,307. So it's going to cost you every week, you've got to be finding $2,307. Now, you might be open 7 days a week. So it's then going to cost you $329 a day to be open. $329 a day. Now, if you're open, let's just say 8 hours a day, that's $41 an hour that your lease is costing you. So the first $41 in sales go towards paying the landlord. Now, I've taken a very arbitrary business case to work out those numbers. I think it's really well worth working that out because I've spoken to a lot of restaurants and you say to them, this is what it costs you per hour that you're open to pay your lease, because let's face it, you're never going to pay your lease off while you're closed. It's only when you've got the doors open. And you can tell that, and we go on and talk about other things, but I've been in multiple meetings where they weren't retaining anything because now that they knew the number of now that they knew the dollars per hour that it was costing them to pay their lease, they knew that a lot of hours they weren't even covering their lease. So you've got to be motoring really hard on your busy times to be able to make it up when you're not covering your lease. So how do you manipulate that? Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. First and foremost, you can take that number to your landlord and say, I can't make this work. Maybe we should do something. Now, if you've gone and spent $500,000 on fit out, guess what your landlord's thinking? Tough. Got a beautiful fit out in there. I'm sure someone will pay good money if you left. And, if you've got an unscrupulous landlord, this might be one of the things that they'll do. They'll know that you've spent that money on there. They'll use any opportunity that they can to get you out of there because it's a beautiful fit out. They can use that and rent it out for a higher price. That's untidy and messy. The other thing that you can do, so that's out of your control if your landlord doesn't want to play ball there. But one thing that is in control is the number of hours that you are open. So the easiest way to halve that number is to double the number of hours that you are open. And this is why a lot of places will be open for extended hours during the day, because they're decreasing the amount of customers that they've got to get in per hour to pay the landlord. And it'll sometimes be worth staying open, even if it's not a lot of traffic that comes in. So I'm thinking maybe it's a breakfast that you do. If you cover wages and you make a small contribution to the lease, then that places you better when you have a good dinner service to make a profitable day. You obviously want every hour to be profitable because that means every day is going to be profitable. But if you're going to have unprofitable hours, if they are making some contribution towards your lease, then it means that you're going to be more profitable. You're going to make more money when you've got those busy times, traditionally in your dinner service. It's one of those things that you should know. It's not going to change over time that much. It's only going to change when you change the hours or when you change your actual lease. So it doesn't change that often, but it's a really good number to know. And I know that there are people who have never even considered that. And when they do, when they think about that, they go, holy crap, our business plan doesn't work. We need to do something fundamental about it. Now, rent per hour, that's just one thing. The next thing you want to do is add in all of your fixed costs, because that's going to be your fixed costs per hour. And it's same with that. So what are your fixed costs? Well, it's going to be your insurance. It's going to be depreciation, property taxes, insurance. So it probably not going to be, obviously your rent is going to be the biggest component of that. There'll be a few others to add in there. And obviously, so the opposite of your fixed costs, well, the other type of costs, you've got your variable costs. And so something like your utilities, so electricity. If you're open more hours, your electricity bill's going to go up. So you do want to make sure that you've got some people coming in, because you're going to be spending more on electricity. You need to have people coming in to actually pay for that. Obviously, the big one is wages. That's going to be a big thing. And your cost of goods sold. These are both, they're examples of your variable costs, and we'll look at those as we look at some of the other metrics about how we're going to manage those in a more sustainable way. One of the things that is important, I think, in something like the rent per hour is, I'm telling you rent per hour and you've never thought of rent per hour, and then you work it out and you go, holy cow, this is pretty untidy, or yeah, I can work with that, or yeah, we're actually better off, than I thought we would be. It's very hard to influence it once you're actually in. With your next restaurant, you'll be better placed. It's one of those things you want to think about. We're going to be open for this many hours. It's going to cost us that, blah, 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 blah. Yes, we're going to be fundamentally better off. And, I think it's really interesting when you see restaurants that have those, that rent per hour advantage, that can make a big difference. Because maybe they're going to run their pricing a little bit different. Maybe they'll have the same pricing. Maybe they're going to be in the perfect situation with the food and experience is going to be so good that they can actually justify a higher price. Even though they've got a lower rent per hour, that means that they're actually running a much more profitable restaurant than the guy next door. So something to think about. And it's one of those things that I think more sophisticated operators are thinking about from the get-go as they do their financial analysis of a potential site. they're marrying up the lease per hour with the number of people who are walking by, knowing that they've got an idea of the number of people that they're going to be able to get in and the ways that they're going to increase the number of people getting in. All of these sort of things. And the other thing that I hope is really important that you're starting to understand is that it's not just one KPI that's really important. It's probably getting 3 or 4. You want to have 3 or 4 of them across different areas in your restaurant, because that way you're going to be tightening things up. Having a really low rent per hour is pointless, absolutely pointless, if your staff turnover is sky high, if your average person in the team is only staying with you for 3 months. Your experience is going to be awful. The amount of time you're going to be, just going insane trying to retrain everyone and hiring, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. It doesn't matter if you're paying $1 a month. You're probably highly likely to be very unprofitable because of all of the other things that are going wrong in the restaurant because of the fact that, you're turning over your staff. So multiple metrics to be looking at. We've just covered the financial ones. There's just a couple of them. There's a lot more, but I think there's some big ones that you need to be looking at. We've got some more finance ones, but they're a little bit more sort of kitchen or front of house metrics, and we're going to look at them in the next episode. So that's about it. Hopefully I've given you something to think about in regard to, obviously, cash flow. It's a big one. And obviously, some of your other costs there from a finance point of view. We're going to kick off with kitchen metrics next week. So that's about it. You have a glorious week. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.